Flight Dreams, a Mark Manning mystery, Book 1. Author, Michael Kraft. Publisher, Open Road Integrated Media, New York. Narrator, Eric Ost. Friday, October the 9th. 84 days till deadline. Dressed to run, Manning stands on the sidewalk looking down the street. Though he has never been here, the place seems familiar. Pieced together from countless recollections, it is midday, warm and perfectly clear. Birdsong drifts from colossal elms that arch over the street to form an endless fluttering tunnel of green, dappled blue. There are no people, no cars, except for the shifting light in the trees above. All is well. Neat white houses line both sides of the street. Big clapboard houses with pitched roofs and open porches. Raised windows frame the soft folds of lace curtains, brilliant in the sun against the void of dark rooms within. Lawns are sheared, smooth as carpets, yet no one mows them this fine day. No one trims their chalk-snapped borders with little silver scissors. Manning turns to glance behind him, hearing the scrape of his soles on the pavement. The rows of houses and trees look identical to those ahead, as though he stood within the plane of a mirror bisecting the planet. He steps off the sidewalk and into the center of the street. A white line divides it, unsmudged by tires, freshly painted with laser-crisp edges that have not dripped into the little valleys formed by pebbles poking through the asphalt. He wears new white leather running shoes with still clean laces. Won't get them dirty on this street, he assures himself. The shoes are worn over rumpled white socks that bunch beneath the muscles of his calves. His shorts are old and comfortable, of bleached white cotton. They balloon a bit, hanging loosely from the elastic band that encircles his waist. A tight black t-shirt pinches under his arms. In the sunlight, it makes him feel sticky and hot, so he pulls the shirt over his head and lets it drop to the street. It floats too slowly, he notes, landing like inky mire on the virginal white line. He rakes 10 fingers through his mussed hair, which is longer than he has worn it in years. Manning stands on the stripe and decides he will run directly down the center of the street, setting the impossible goal of reaching the point where stripe and sky converge. His mind rushes with confidence and doubt, determination and resignation, exhilaration and fatigue. The emotional jumble known to any runner who summons the will to begin. He sets off with those first awkward steps that precede a running stride. His feet tangle, he trips, and though he feels the forward pitch of his body, he does not fall. Glancing down, he finds the t-shirt wrapped around the tips of both shoes. What's more, the shirt has somehow worked its way beneath the stripe. He squats to untangle the shirt, examining the stripe. He finds that it is not paint at all, but a rubbery ribbon, a tape of fine elastic film that stretches tightly to both horizons. He straddles the strip and grasps it with both hands, yanking it up between his legs. He lets go. It slaps the ground with a resounding whack that silences the birds. Manning grabs the shirt, tosses it aside, and watches it drift like a leaf, undulating through sinuous, contorted shapes. With his weight thrust to one leg, hand on hip, he stands akimbo, like a Greek athlete cut from marble. Birdsong swells again, eyeing the point where the stripe vanishes. He musters the will to run. He raises one leg and begins at a trot, trying to find his stride, unable to goad the mechanism of his body into a full run. His shorts no longer drape loosely, but pinch his waist and thwart his movement. He is running in place without moving from the spot. Closing his eyes and lowering his head, he redoubles the pumping efforts of his legs. He trips, feels the ground pull out from under him, spreads his arms before him to break the fall, to cushion the grinding of pavement against flesh. But the blow is not delivered. He feels nothing. Opening his eyes, he is amazed to see the street floating beneath him, inches away. He hovers above the line, suspended with the tips of his fingers. He nudges the ground, propelling his body upright. The futile run has left him confused and breathless. His groin burns, his short spine his hips in a clammy grasp. Without hesitation, he slides his thumbs inside the waistband, pushes downward, and lifts each foot to freedom, kicking the shorts to the side of the street. Manning stands broadly, both hands on hips, naked, except for his immaculate running shoes. He feels the play of fresh air on his genitals and savors the sensation, with face skyward, eyes closed, mouth open. Once more he summons the will to run, and this time his head fills only with emotions that will push him onward. No dread, no fear, no doubts. His brain sends the message to his feet with an electric shock that bolts him forward. Each foot pounds in front of the other. The street's pebbles streak backward. Each impact pulls harder on his swaying genitals, and he feels his penis harden. Hears it slap against his legs. He fixes his eyes on the point that lies forever ahead. His peripheral vision blurs with racing houses and trees. Only the stripe appears stationary in the world rushing past. Manning quickens his pace, lengthens his stride, the muscles in his chest stretch to their limit. He no longer hears the birds, their song drowned out by the bellows in his lung, by the heart that pumps in his ears, by the sound of feet gripping ground like the claws of an animal fleeing a predator. And now it happens. Manning trips again, flying forward with the full force of his sprint. In one moment, he cringes at the prospect of his naked body scraping the street. And the next, he's loft. His feet stop treading, for they can no longer touch the ground. His breathing slows. He keeps a cautious gaze fixed on the white line. While Manning drifts at a walking speed only a yard above ground, his uneasy thoughts flood with the mystery and awe of the phenomenon. He holds his body straight, with his head somewhat higher than his feet. His height above the street gradually lessens. He can just touch the ground with his toes, and kicking can gain speed momentarily, but can rise no higher. He finally drifts so low that he reaches down with both hands and pushes backward. His body rights itself, and he stands motionless on the line. Looking over his shoulder, not seeing his clothes near the curb, he confirms that he has floated a considerable distance. Could it happen again? Can he summon this strange faculty at will, like running? Or is it some outside force that acts upon him? Does he even want it to happen again? He decides that his anxiety was merely a reaction to the unknown. The experience itself, he admits, was enjoyable. He wants to repeat it, but he doesn't know how. Manning tries jumping and lands firmly on his feet. On the same spot, feeling foolish, he jumps again, higher, this time flapping his arms once or twice, and lands as before, now feeling very foolish. He recalls that when he floated before, he had tripped first, so he runs a short distance, waiting to trip, or to fake trip. But nothing happens. Perhaps if he just stands there and tips forward as if to fall on his face. Dropping his hands to his sides, he consciously relaxes and rocks forward onto his toes as if falling, not diving off the edge of a precipice. At the moment when he loses equilibrium, he is aloft. Just as before, he drifts silently above the line down the center of the street, exhilarated by his ability to summon this new power. Manning itches to explore its limits. Can he move faster? Higher? He tries kicking and pushing as before. He even wiggles in midair like a fish in water. But without success, he floats along, gradually losing altitude. When the answer occurs to him, seeming so obvious, he simply decides to fly higher, and his distance from the ground begins to increase. He wants to fly faster, so he wills his speed to increase. Manning now flies at a height midway between the street and the canopy of trees, at the level of the house's second-story windows. He can tell by the progress of his broken shadow on the street that he is moving faster than he could run. The birds are louder up here. He's practically in the trees with them. But their chatter is muffled by the rush of air past his ears. He amuses himself flying higher and lower, faster and slower, as if trying out the controls of a machine, wondering if the white line limits his pattern of flight. He focuses his efforts upon cruising to the left of it, at the same time leaning slightly in that direction. He effortlessly glides to the left of the line, then to the right. Satisfied that the direction of his flight is indeed within his control, he returns to the center to fly straight above the stripe, enjoying the symmetry of the view. He's having fun, and before long he's faced with the inevitable question. How high? How fast can I go? Manning rises above the roofs of the houses and feels his pulse quicken. He tests his skill by boosting his speed and darting just below the branches of the huge trees. Protruding leaves brush through his hair, down his back and over his buttocks. His groin tingles, his penis stiffens in the rush of air passing under his body. He slows his flight and rises higher into the trees. Can he pass through them and soar higher still? Ahead he sees a clearing in the foliage and a patch of sky beyond, so he flies upward through the branches toward the blue. Leaves skim the length of his body, gliding over his chest, rustling between his legs, bombarding his mind with frenzied, erotic signals. Twigs snap, birds cackle at the intrusion, and now it is all beneath him. Treetops glide below, clouds above. He flies faster, higher still, as the trees recede further and the panorama of Earth itself arcs before him. Thrilled, yet frightened by the height at which he travels, he dares not think of what might happen if he suddenly lost his newfound power. This power overwhelms him with a freedom and virility he has never known. His erect penis drives forward, slicing two broad sheets of air, awake in the atmosphere that fans out invisibly behind him. Pricking sensations rise from between his legs and into his chest. His genitals clench, his limbs thrust outward, making a giant X of his body like a skydiver in freefall. The coming surge in his groins convulses his hips and at last pumps long glistening strands of semen into the air beneath him. He watches through a euphoric haze as the crystal beads glitter in the sun and plummet toward the trees. Hearing the smack of the drops as they hit the upper leaves, he wonders if they will stick there or drip like milky taffy to the street. "Good morning," says a familiar voice, as if from the clouds, as if in his ear. "It's 7 o'clock in Chicago, the 9th of October. Current O'Hare temperature is 58 degrees, and we're due for more rain. Friends and neighbors, this is Bud Sturcom. Later we'll talk with a number of guests who will share their outrage over the Helena Carter murder case, and they will open the phone lines because your views are important. But first, let's try waking up with a bit of Saint Sians, whose birthday we celebrate today." Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.